April 1558, Topkapi Palace. An imperial physician enters the private chambers of the most powerful woman in the Ottoman Empire. What he finds makes him tremble. Hürrem Sultan, the slave who became empress, lies motionless. But it's not death that shocks him. It's what she clutches in her hand. A single piece of parchment that, if discovered, would destroy the Ottoman dynasty. That document vanished that night, and with it, the true story of how Hürrem Sultan died. Until today. You know Hürrem from Magnificent Century, the rebellious slave who seduced the most powerful sultan in history. Or maybe you've never heard of her. Either way, what you're about to discover will shatter everything, because the real Hürrem, much darker, much more brilliant, much more tragic than any TV show dared to portray. The official story says she died of illness, natural causes. It's a lie, and the proof has been hidden in Ottoman archives for 465 years. In the next 16 minutes, you'll discover exactly what happened in those final 3 days. The ring she wore, the pact she made, and the choice that still haunts historians today. This isn't romance. This is the price of absolute power. 1520, Imperial Harem, Istanbul. A 15-year-old girl, real name probably Alexandra Lisowska, is about to beat impossible odds. She was kidnapped from Ukraine, sold in Crimean slave markets, purchased for Sultan Suleiman's harem. Here's what she faced. 300 women. All beautiful, all educated in music, poetry, conversation. Only one becomes the Sultan's favorite. Her chances? Basically zero. But while other girls wept, Alexandra calculated. She noticed something others missed. The young Sultan Suleiman, just 26, newly crowned, was bored. Bored by beauty, bored by submission, bored by women who only said yes. He read Persian poetry, wrote love verses, craved intellectual challenge. So that first night, Alexandra did the unthinkable. She told him no, not a rejection, a tease, just enough to make him laugh, to make him curious, to make him return. She told Ukrainian folk tales, mocked his poetry, debated Islamic philosophy with him. And here's what Magnificent Century won't tell you. Hürrem didn't seduce Suleiman with beauty. She won by being the only person in that palace who treated him like a man instead of a god. In an empire where everyone trembled before the Sultan, she challenged him. Suleiman fell completely, utterly in love. 1 year later, pregnant. 3 years later, 3 sons. And that's when the real game began. Because in the Ottoman system, children weren't just children, they were weapons. Each son a potential sultan. Each daughter a political alliance. Hürrem understood this better than anyone who'd ever lived. 1533, the impossible marriage. For the first time in 300 years, an Ottoman sultan officially marries a concubine. Think about what that means. Hürrem shattered the empire's most sacred law. Slaves cannot become sultanas, ever. Why did that law exist? To prevent any single woman from accumulating catastrophic power through her children. But Hürrem found the loophole. She had 6 children with Suleiman, 6, when protocol limited each concubine to 1. Every time advisors protested, she deployed the perfect counter. Suleiman's obsessive love made separation impossible. But here's the genius part. She didn't just seduce him. She became indispensable. Over 400 letters between them survived. They discussed military campaigns, treaty negotiations, provincial appointments. Suleiman found what every powerful man craves but rarely finds, an intellectual equal. In 1533, he married her. The court exploded, the empire reeled. But in an absolute monarchy, the Sultan's word is law. Then came the masterstroke. 1534. Hürrem relocates from the harem to apartments directly adjacent to the Sultan's private chambers. Sounds minor. It was revolutionary. The harem was physically isolated from power. Women lived in a separate world. Hürrem destroyed that separation. For the first time in Ottoman history, a woman occupied the empire's nerve center, where wars were planned, where treaties were signed, where executions were ordered. She wasn't waiting to be summoned anymore. She was there. Always. Beside the throne, every conversation, every secret, every decision. And anyone who threatened her started dying. Ibrahim Pasha, Grand Vizier, the empire's second most powerful man, more importantly Suleiman's childhood friend, his brother in everything but blood. The Sultan called him brother of my heart. Ibrahim controlled the military, the bureaucracy, foreign policy, and he recognized exactly what Hürrem was doing, systematically capturing the Sultan's mind. Ibrahim made his move. He convinced Suleiman to take new concubines, tried diluting Hürrem's influence. Catastrophic mistake. March 15th, 1536. Ibrahim dines with Suleiman in the palace. They reminisce, laugh about childhood adventures, share wine like brothers, perfect evening, intimate, warm. Ibrahim retires to his chambers, the same rooms he'd occupied for 15 years. Morning, his body discovered. Strangled. Official charge? High treason. But Venetian ambassadors, who documented everything in encrypted dispatches, tell the real story. Hürrem presented Suleiman with evidence. Letters showing Ibrahim's secret communications with Persia. Witnesses claiming they'd heard him discuss seizing the throne. Fabricated, almost certainly. But Suleiman believed, or wanted to believe, because choosing between your oldest friend and the woman you love is an impossible choice. He chose Hürrem. Ibrahim died, and the message resonated through every corridor. Oppose Hürrem Sultan, and not even decades of brotherhood with the Sultan will save you. But one final threat remained, the deadliest of all, Prince Mustafa, Suleiman's son from his previous marriage. Handsome, charismatic, military genius, beloved by the Janissary Corps. Foreign ambassadors wrote glowing reports. The army worshipped him. The people saw him as the empire's destined future. In every measurable way, he was superior to Hürrem's sons. And there was the problem. Ottoman law mandated legal fratricide. When a new sultan ascended, he executed all potential rivals, brothers, half-brothers, nephews, not cruelty, survival. The only way to prevent civil wars that would tear the empire apart. If Mustafa became sultan, Hürrem's 5 children died, guaranteed. So Hürrem faced an impossible equation: watch her sons executed, or eliminate Mustafa. She chose elimination. It took 19 years. Slowly, methodically, she planted doubts in Suleiman's mind. The army loves Mustafa too much, dangerously much. The Janissaries speak of him as if he's already sultan. Those letters from Persia addressed to Mustafa seem unusual, each seed tiny, barely noticeable. But year after year, the poison accumulated. 1553, Persian campaign. Suleiman summons Mustafa to the imperial command tent. Routine meeting. Or so it appeared. Mustafa enters. 7 mute executioners wait inside. He understands instantly. He tries defending himself, but he's unarmed. Princes never carry weapons before the Sultan. They strangle him with silk cord, the royal method. Suleiman watches. Protocol demands the Sultan witness. Mustafa was 38. Hürrem won. Her children secured, succession guaranteed. But the price, the army nearly mutinied. The people mourned for months. And Suleiman himself, historians agree he was never the same man after that day. Now watch what happens to Hürrem. After Mustafa's execution, something broke inside Hürrem. She was 49. She'd achieved absolute power. Her children were safe. Should have been triumph. Instead, she began unraveling. Letters to Suleiman, hundreds preserved in archives, grew darker, obsessively religious, consumed by death and divine judgment. She wrote about nightmares, premonitions, feeling shadows watching. She described seeing their faces. Ibrahim, Mustafa, the others who'd fallen, 1557. 1 year before her death, Hürrem writes to her daughter Mihrimah. Historians discovered this letter in 1982, hidden in a Venetian private collection. The words are haunting. My daughter, when I close my eyes, I see every face. Ibrahim, Mustafa, all those who had to fall so you and your brothers could survive. They ask me one question, was it worth it? And I have no answer. This wasn't physical decline. This was psychological collapse. The weight of what she'd done had become unbearable. She threw herself into charity, mosques, hospitals, schools. the Haseki Hürrem Sultan complex still standing in Istanbul, as if each building could erase one death, one betrayal, one manipulation. Then 1558 arrived. Suleiman departs for another military campaign. He's 64 but refuses to stop. Hürrem remains alone in Istanbul. In the palace, she'd conquered stone by stone, but before leaving, Suleiman asked her something. One simple question about Mustafa. And in that moment, Hürrem knew. He was starting to suspect, starting to investigate. The truth was surfacing. April 1558, the last 3 days. Official Ottoman chronicles say almost nothing, just one word: illness. But Venetian intelligence documents tell a different story. 3 days before death, late night, Hürrem secretly summons Mihrima. She hands over documents, letters, 30 years of evidence. Venetian sources record her words: "If I die, burn everything, leave nothing, protect your brothers." What was in those documents? Evidence linking her to Ibrahim's execution, correspondence with secret allies, proof of her systematic manipulation of Suleiman. We'll never know. Mihrima burned them that same night, 2 days before. Hürrem stops eating, refuses everything from the imperial kitchens. She accepts only water, brought personally by Mihrima. Think about that detail. It means she feared poison. Or she was preparing something else. April 18th, 1558. Evening. Hürrem summons her physicians. When they arrive, they find something bizarre. She's conscious, completely lucid. But her body is rapidly failing. The symptoms they document in palace archives match arsenic poisoning perfectly. Violent vomiting, severe abdominal pain, convulsions, skin turning ash grey. But here's what makes no sense. Nobody was poisoning her. Guards swear nobody entered her chambers. Mihrima swears the water was pure. Food tasters showed no symptoms. Servants were fine. So what happened? Pause that question, because what comes next changes everything. 2003, Imperial Archives, Istanbul. Turkish historian Leslie Pierce discovers a document, a notation by the palace chief physician, written in medical code. Dated April 19th, 1558, the day after Hürrem died. When the code was deciphered, it revealed this: the Sultana accumulated the substance over many months, concealed within a ring worn constantly on her finger, sufficient quantity for 3 administrations. She consumed 1 dose each night for 3 consecutive nights. When I comprehended the truth, intervention was impossible. You understand what this means? Hürrem took her own life, deliberately, methodically, over 3 nights, using arsenic she'd collected from the poisons used to eliminate her enemies across the years. The ring, an exquisite jewel Suleiman had gifted her, contained a hidden compartment. Inside that compartment, death itself. But why? She'd won everything. Her children were safe. Selim would inherit the throne. She'd reached absolute power's summit. Why choose this? The answer is as brilliant as it is devastating. 1 month after Hürrem's death, Mihrima writes to her brother Selim. That letter survived, and it explains everything. Mihrima wrote, "Our mother knew. When father returned from campaign, he would uncover everything. The letters, the alliances, the networks she'd built during his absence. He'd been asking questions about Mustafa. Specific, pointed questions. And he would never forgive her. But he would forgive her children. That's why she did what she did." Now you see it. Hürrem understood. Suleiman was investigating Mustafa's execution. Someone, an old advisor, a surviving enemy, was planting evidence, raising doubts. The truth was emerging. If Suleiman discovered how extensively she'd manipulated him, he could. Exile her sons, change succession, execute Selim, install a different heir, destroy everything she'd built. So Hürrem calculated one final move. Die before he returns. Die from natural illness. Take every secret to the grave. Leave her children as innocent victims, not accomplices. Because here's the key. A sultan can rage at a dead wife. But he cannot punish children for their mother's crimes. It was her ultimate sacrifice. Her final political calculation. Even in death, she was protecting her children. Think about that level of strategic thinking. Even choosing how to die became a chess move. April 20th, 1558. Midnight. Hürrem's funeral violated every imperial protocol. Normally, a figure this important receives days of public ceremonies, lying in state, official mourning, instead, buried at night. In haste, only Mihrima, her brothers, and 3 trusted servants present. Why the rush? The chief physician told Mihrima the truth. If other doctors examined the body, if questions were asked, the suicide would be discovered. And in Islam, taking one's own life is among the gravest sins. It would dishonor the entire family. Brand her sons as children of a sinner, potentially disqualify them from succession. So Mihrima executed what her mother taught her. Take control. Documents burned. Body buried immediately. Physician paid for permanent silence. Official narrative constructed. Natural death from illness. The secret was buried with her. For 465 years, it stayed buried. Until Leslie Pierce opened that archive file in 2003. When Suleiman returned 1 month later and learned Hürrem was dead, he shattered. Chronicles describe him weeping for days, refusing food, calling her name in his sleep. He commissioned the Haseki Hürrem Mosque, among Istanbul's most beautiful, still standing today. He never remarried, never took another concubine. He died 8 years later, in 1566, still devoted to her memory. But here's the final, crushing irony. Selim, Hürrem's son, the one she'd protected with her life, became sultan exactly as planned. And he was a disaster, weak, alcoholic, utterly disinterested in governing. History remembers him as Selim the Sot, the only Ottoman sultan famous primarily for drinking wine. Meanwhile, Mustafa, the brilliant prince she'd orchestrated killing, would likely have been the greatest sultan in Ottoman history. He could have expanded the empire, strengthened institutions, secured centuries of prosperity. Instead, under Selim, the Ottoman Empire began its long, slow decline. Everything Hürrem sacrificed, every death, every manipulation, her own life, to place a mediocre drunk on the throne. That's the cruelest irony history offers. So here's the truth about Hürrem Sultan. She didn't die of illness. She chose death. Slowly poisoned herself over 3 nights with arsenic hidden in a ring, to protect her children, to preserve her legacy, to bury her secrets forever. Was she victim or villain? She was both. And neither. A kidnapped slave who became empress. A mother who eliminated her stepson to save her own children. A strategist who controlled an empire for 40 years, and a woman ultimately destroyed by the weight of her choices. See, Hürrem's lesson isn't that power corrupts. It's that power demands impossible sacrifices. Every victory carries a hidden cost. Sometimes you win everything and lose yourself. Hürrem conquered the world's most powerful empire. But she lost her humanity, claiming it. She reached power's absolute summit, but she could never escape the shadows of those she destroyed climbing there. That April night in 1558, with poison burning through her body, as Mihrima held her hand, she faced the same question from her letter. Was it worth it? She looked at her children's faces, thought about the throne they'd inherit, and swallowed her final dose. We'll never know her answer. But her story, the real story, not the television fantasy, teaches us something fundamental. Power always demands payment. The higher you climb, the more you pay. Hürrem Sultan paid until her last breath. Now here's what I need you to do. If this story affected you the way it affected me when I discovered it in the archives, hit subscribe. Speaking of which, Hürrem wasn't the only woman who played this deadly game in the Ottoman palace. Her daughter-in-law, Nurbanu Sultan, went further. Much further. What she orchestrated to secure her son's throne makes Hürrem look merciful by comparison. The largest royal fratricide in human history. 19 princes, all sons of the same sultan, all executed in a single night, by one mother's command.